The front yard was filled with the sound of firecrackers, celebrating my husband's triumphant return. Margaret had instructed me to wait in the courtyard. Alice ran back from the front yard, breathless.
Miss, the general has brought back a woman who appears to be expecting.
I continued to fiddle with my golden abacus, my emotions unperturbed. Compared to my husband taking a concubine, I found the prospect of being penniless far more terrifying. I came from a merchant family, and marrying Ethan was considered a step up. My father, worried I might be mistreated, gave me 12 streets worth of shops as my dowry, which generated substantial annual profits. With money at my disposal, life wasn't too difficult. However, the people of the Ethan household never approved of my background. Margaret once publicly declared that I was unworthy and that my womb was uncooperative, as I hadn't borne any children for the family in 2 years. She knew full well that on our wedding day, Ethan was ordered to the frontier, barely lifting my veil before leaving for 2 years. He probably couldn't even remember what I looked like. If I had gotten pregnant, it would have been impossible to explain.
You have more money than you could spend in 8 lifetimes. What's the use of having so much?
I had to agree. The most painful thing in life is to leave behind unspent money. The thought of my hard-earned silver potentially benefiting some unfortunate child made my heart ache unbearably. I immediately took out a banknote for 100,000 taels from my treasure box and handed it to Alice.
Help me buy as much land as you can in the western suburbs.
Though I wasn't short of money, land was scarce. In times of disaster, having land was more valuable than money, and stockpiling grain was the sensible thing to do. In the evening, a maid from the front yard came to inform me that Matilda had invited me to dinner. I deliberately changed into a radiant outfit, dressing up like a dazzling golden peacock, and made my way to the front yard. I saw the woman behind Ethan. Her belly wasn't showing yet, and she looked shy and malnourished, with dry, yellow hair. Ethan seemed very concerned about her, as if afraid I might harm her, shielding her protectively.
So this is the lady my husband brought back. She looks refreshing.
The woman's face stiffened, almost on the verge of tears. Ethan, filled with pity, glanced at me coldly.
Why are you giving Rose a hard time?
Everyone around glared at me, but I had done nothing wrong. In fact, I was the one who had been wronged. My husband had a child with someone else and brought her back openly. Although no one said anything outright, by tomorrow, I would become the laughingstock among the ladies. No one cared about that. In their eyes, I was just a jealous shrew bullying a pitiful young girl. The servants could only hold their opinions, but Margaret wouldn't make things difficult for herself.
Since Rose is carrying Ethan's child, we can't let her suffer. She will be welcomed into the household as a concubine for now.
For now? I laughed. If Rose gave birth to a boy, would she be elevated to the status of a wife? Or worse, would I be cast aside to make room for her? I looked at Ethan and saw his face full of agreement. The room fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I said nothing, took a sip of tea. Seeing everyone remain silent, the least noticeable Rose couldn't help but speak up.
Sister, I know you don't like me, but Ethan and I truly love each other. Please don't blame us.
She looked like a delicate white flower, ready to wilt at the slightest breeze, making me the villain and earning me a heap of disdainful looks.
Rose, since Mother and my husband both like you, I have nothing to say. Let's follow Mother's decision and make you a concubine.
Since I couldn't stop their decision, I might as well gain some favor.
The wind chime courtyard is currently vacant. I'll have it prepared for you to stay there.
The wind chime courtyard was the closest to Ethan's Harmony courtyard, a gesture of goodwill.
No need, Rose will stay with me.
This was truly a slap in the face. I forced a smile, suppressing the urge to throw tea in his face.
As long as my husband is happy.
With their goal achieved, the three of them breathed a sigh of relief and ordered the meal to be served. A variety of exquisite dishes, both in appearance and taste, were laid out, but I didn't even bother to pick up my chopsticks. Rose watched intently, her eyes gleaming. Ethan thoughtfully served her food, their affection for each other evident, making others envious. It made my heart bleed. East Sea Yellow Croaker, 220 tails, Braised Shark Fin, 80 tails, 5 Snake Soup, 100 tails, Clear Soup Bird's Nest, 200 tails.
The family chef's skills are truly excellent. It's been a long time since I'd had such delicious food.
Ethan said, finishing 2 bowls of rice and asking for a third.
If you like it, we'll have the kitchen make it again tomorrow.
Make it again tomorrow? I sneered inwardly. You really dare to think so? Not to mention the cost, but the ingredients were rare and hard to come by. It took me a month to gather these ingredients, originally intended for my father's birthday celebration. He had no other hobbies but loved good food. Now, a month's effort had gone to waste for someone else. Rose ate with relish, and even Matilda seemed to find the meal particularly delicious, having an extra bowl of soup. I sighed. My money. Ethan had a great victory this time, and the Emperor was very pleased, praising him a lot, though the rewards were rather meager. Strangely enough, I received an honorary title. Alice also brought back good news. Although many people had their eyes on the land in the western suburbs, my financial prowess allowed me to secure it at a price 20% higher than others. It was the planting season, and only half of the land in the western suburbs was farmland, while the other half lay fallow, which was a waste.
Use the other half of the land to build a restaurant and an inn, and construct a road leading straight to the top of the western mountain. Do you understand what I mean?
The capital is full of wealthy people. They don't mind high prices, they only mind if it's not expensive enough. Why don't we follow Miss Yu's example and implement a membership system? The more they spend, the higher their status. There will definitely be fools willing to spend a lot of money.
I patted her head approvingly. She had grown up with me and had a kind heart, never exploiting the poor. I entrusted this matter to Alice. She understood the intricacies best. Although young, she was quite capable. Just as I was thinking about the silver that would soon fill my pockets, a maid came to inform me that Miss Grace had arrived. Rose's real name was Grace, a farmer's daughter from the border, often affected by the ravages of war and struggling to get enough to eat. However, she was lucky to have met Ethan, which changed her life dramatically. I had no particular opinion about her. In the business world, I had seen all kinds of people, and my tolerance had increased significantly. She came to see me, still looking shy. Before she even spoke, her face turned red.
Miss Rose, feel free to speak your mind.
I played with the golden abacus in my hand, the beads clinking. This abacus was made of pure gold, small and exquisite, a birthday gift from my father when I was 10.
Sister, my husband asked me to discuss the matter of my formal entry into the household. You know, it's becoming inconvenient for me to wait any longer.
She glanced at her belly as she spoke.
Miss Rose, Margaret is still in charge of the household. There's nothing I can do.
I wasn't lying to her. Matilda managed all the affairs of the Ethan household. What was I compared to her? If it weren't for my wealth, I would have been kicked out long ago. Grace lowered her head, seemingly deep in thought, then suddenly stood up and said coldly,
Then I won't bother you anymore, sister.
Her maid quickly supported her, as if she had trouble walking. I didn't take this matter to heart until the evening when Ethan came to the Frost courtyard to confront me.
Grace started feeling unwell after returning from your place and had almost had a miscarriage. You must be jealous of Grace and want to harm her child.
Husband, do you really not trust me?
Clara, if anything happens to Rose, I won't forgive you.
My heart turned cold, and I laughed.
If you believe I am so malicious, then let's part ways and get a divorce.
My marriage to Ethan was a mistake from the start. We were never meant to be together, it was all because my father spent money. Robert passed away early, and before Ethan rose to prominence, the Ethan family had already declined, leaving only an empty title and a hollow shell. But my father believed that Ethan, being young and ambitious, and also filial, would make a good husband in the future. So, he poured money into him. When the emperor ordered him to guard the frontier and there was not enough food, my father sent provisions. When the winter clothes were not warm enough, my father sent more. If it weren't illegal to privately manufacture weapons, my father might have sent those too. Because of this, Matilda lowered her noble head and agreed to my marriage with Ethan. But my father, despite all his calculations, never anticipated that Ethan would indeed be a good husband, just not to me. Since I mentioned separation, Ethan has never set foot in Frost Garden again, and I am quite content with the peace. To say I was heartbroken would be an exaggeration. After all, I could count on one hand the number of times we met, let alone any conjugal relations. Now, he is busy marrying his beloved, with no time to bother with me. The Ethan residence is filled with joy, red silk flowers hanging everywhere. Anyone who didn't know better would think it was a wedding. Ethan couldn't bear to see Grace suffer any grievances, insisting on the best of everything: porcelain from Ding Kiln, furniture made of Wangwali wood, and wedding dress embroidery with gold thread. The grandeur that wasn't there when he married his first wife is now all in place, as if afraid others wouldn't know he favored his concubine. I clicked my golden abacus, unable to help but marvel. When he married me, the Ethan family cried poverty, keeping everything simple, spending less than 2,000 taels in total. Now it seems they have prospered, spending at least 50,000 taels to marry a concubine. While strolling in the residence, I happened to run into Grace again. She looked much better now. The capital's environment is indeed nourishing. Her belly seemed slightly larger, and she had a few smug expressions on her face.
Sister, Rose's marriage is all thanks to your efforts. Rose is here to thank you.
Your marriage was arranged by Mother and my husband. I had no part in it.
If I didn't distance myself, any mishap would surely be blamed on me. Remembering the trouble I faced last time, I silently stepped back 3 paces, afraid she might cause trouble. Grace's smile froze, then she awkwardly changed the subject, gently caressing her belly.
My husband said that once I give birth to the heir, he will elevate me to equal wife status. He was worried you wouldn't agree, but I know you're not a jealous woman.
My face turned cold. Previously, I could tolerate their antics because she was just a concubine. No matter how much he favored her, she couldn't cause much trouble. The crime of favoring a concubine over a wife is enough to make Ethan lose the emperor's favor if the censor reports it. The current emperor is a legitimate son who almost lost the throne to an illegitimate brother. If it weren't for his brother William's staunch support, someone else might be sitting on the throne now. Therefore, he despises officials who favor concubines over wives. Even if she becomes an equal wife, she is still a concubine, just with a more pleasant title. But Grace said, once she gives birth to the heir. So her child isn't born yet, and Ethan has already decided to make him the heir. The legitimate wife isn't dead yet, and he's planning to make an illegitimate son the heir. Does he think I will never have children in my lifetime? Fine, I never intended to have children with him anyway. These past 2 years were wasted, trying to force a relationship that was rotten and foul. It's time I let myself go. Facing Grace's beaming eyes, I coldly said,
I am.
Though I wasn't short of money, land was scarce. In times of disaster, having land was more valuable than money, and stockpiling grain was the sensible thing to do. In the evening, a maid from the front yard came to inform me that Matilda had invited me to dinner. I deliberately changed into a radiant outfit, dressing up like a dazzling golden peacock, and made my way to the front yard. I saw the woman behind Ethan. Her belly wasn't showing yet, and she looked shy and malnourished, with dry, yellow hair. Ethan seemed very concerned about her, as if afraid I might harm her, shielding her protectively.
So this is the lady my husband brought back. She looks refreshing.
The woman's face stiffened, almost on the verge of tears. Ethan, filled with pity, glanced at me coldly.
Why are you giving Rose a hard time?
Life in the Ethan household became increasingly difficult, with meals getting worse by the day. Although Ethan's salary was not low, the expenses were even higher. The household expenses aside, even gift-giving was a huge expenditure. In the court, relationships were paramount, and both joyous and sorrowful events required money. Since Ethan brought Grace back, I hadn't spent a penny outside. Spending money now would make me as foolish as a pig. After Ethan sent a few gifts, his already poor reputation worsened. When he was preparing the betrothal gifts recently, he was very extravagant. How come he became stingy when it came to giving gifts? Ethan had grievances he couldn't express. He came to Frost Garden several times to complain and hint that I should provide money, but I didn't respond. Watching his defeated figure leave, like a dejected rooster, I felt a sense of satisfaction. The worse the Ethan household got, the more I adorned myself with gold and silver. At dusk, a cosmetics shop sent over some new products, each with its unique charm.
Wow, look at these. I must try them all.
Before I could try them, a maid from Matilda's side came to invite me, saying Matilda wanted to have dinner with me. I leisurely dressed up, put on a delicate bracelet, and then gracefully got up. The courtyard was covered with fallen phoenix tree leaves. I paused to admire them, lamenting how time flies.
Sigh, girls as discerning as Alice are rare.
These phoenix trees were part of my dowry, rare species transported from the south, pruned by renowned craftsmen. When I arrived at the Wisdom Hall, Ethan was there, but Grace was absent.
Clara, sit down and have a cup of tea first.
She didn't call me Mrs. Shin, which was indeed suspicious. Could it be that she wanted to poison me?
Well, they wouldn't dare, would they?
It was an ordinary pu'er tea, barely quenching my thirst, not a good tea at all.
Didn't you notice anything wrong with this tea?
Mother's tea is naturally excellent.
The tea sent a while ago, I thought it was quite good.
Once accustomed to delicacies, it's hard to go back to plain food.
Snowbud is indeed good tea, but it's priceless in the market. I'm afraid it won't be available until next spring.
Matilda couldn't say anything more. In a wealthy family, face was everything. She couldn't directly ask her daughter-in-law to take out her private money to subsidize the household.
On the 6th of next month, the heir of the Duke of Chen's family is getting married. You should prepare a generous gift for Ethan. He's busy with official duties, so you should take care of it for him.
The 5th of next month is my father's birthday. I'm busy preparing a birthday gift and can't spare the time. Why don't you prepare it yourself, Mother? You're discerning. I will surely choose a gift that will satisfy the Duke's family.
Matilda wanted to say more, but Ethan gritted his teeth.
Mother, if she is unwilling, we shouldn't force her.
I thought that since we had torn our faces, Ethan would soon agree to a separation. Unexpectedly, he dragged it out until spring, still unwilling to agree.
Your father was so saddened by your plight that he ate half a bowl less of rice.
I was lamenting our deep father-daughter bond when Ethan unexpectedly arrived, holding a piece of paper.
What are you here for?
You are no longer a woman of the Ethan family. Leave the Ethan household as soon as possible.
I was stunned for a moment. Was this a blessing in disguise? Despite never lacking money, land was a rare commodity. In times of disaster, land was more valuable than currency, and hoarding grain was the prudent course.
Miss Clara, Matilda has invited you to dinner.
I changed into a luminous outfit, resembling a golden peacock, and headed to the front yard. Behind Ethan stood a shy and malnourished woman with dry, yellow hair. Ethan guarded her protectively, as if I might harm her.
So this is the lady my husband brought back. She looks refreshing.
The woman's face stiffened, nearly in tears. Ethan, filled with pity, shot me a cold glance.
Why are you giving Rose a hard time?
Though I wasn't short of money, land was scarce. In times of disaster, having land was more valuable than money, and stockpiling grain was the sensible thing to do. In the evening, a maid from the front yard came to inform me that Matilda had invited me to dinner.
Madam, Matilda has requested your presence for dinner tonight.
I deliberately changed into a radiant outfit, dressing up like a dazzling golden peacock, and made my way to the front yard. I saw the woman behind Ethan. Her belly wasn't showing yet, and she looked shy and malnourished, with dry, yellow hair. Ethan seemed very concerned about her, as if afraid I might harm her, shielding her protectively.
So this is the lady my husband brought back. She looks refreshing.
The woman's face stiffened, almost on the verge of tears. Ethan, filled with pity, glanced at me coldly.
Why are you giving Rose a hard time?
Though I wasn't short of money, land was scarce. In times of disaster, having land was more valuable than money, and stockpiling grain was the sensible thing to do. In the evening, a maid from the front yard came to inform me that Matilda had invited me to dinner. I deliberately changed into a radiant outfit, dressing up like a dazzling golden peacock, and made my way to the front yard.
Matilda, thank you for the invitation. I hope I'm not late.
Not at all, Clara. Please, come in.
I saw the woman behind Ethan. Her belly wasn't showing yet, and she looked shy and malnourished, with dry, yellow hair. Ethan seemed very concerned about her, shielding her protectively.
So this is the lady my husband brought back. She looks refreshing.
The woman's face stiffened, almost on the verge of tears. Ethan, filled with pity, glanced at me coldly.
Why are you giving Rose a hard time?
By May, the weather had already turned warm, and more people were visiting the western suburbs. Leaning against the railing, I gazed out at the endless golden wheat fields on one side and the lush apricot orchards on the other. Only upon closer inspection did I notice the orange-yellow apricots hanging from the branches. On the first day of the opening of the Wutong Tavern, I attended in full regalia, wearing a dark red brocade dress. To match the occasion, I had large apricot blossoms embroidered with gold thread on the hem of my dress, which complemented the golden apricot hairpin in my hair. I faced the guests' scrutiny with grace and instructed the waiter to serve each table a plate of freshly picked apricots. The apricots, with their sweet and tangy flavor, were a hit, earning praise from everyone. Many decided on the spot to go apricot picking in the Western Hills after their meal, making the trip worthwhile. The road to the Western Hills was lined with vendors selling food, toys, and daily necessities, offering a unique charm compared to the bustling city. Even William came to show his support. When he saw me, his eyes seemed to light up.
Miss Clara, this place is wonderful. I wonder if I could invest in it.
I racked my brain for a way to refuse him, but he was quite understanding.
I'm just joking. You have a good sense of humor.
We walked side by side on the cobblestone path, enjoying the cool mountain breeze, which made the heat bearable.
Did you also want to buy this land back then?
William paused and thought for a moment, then smiled. For a moment, the scenery around us seemed to lose its color, leaving only his unparalleled face.
I once promised a little girl that I would plant the largest field and grow the most grain for her, so she could have endless green bean cakes.
He sighed.
Unfortunately, I was short on funds.
I frowned, feeling like I had heard this story before. It seemed like a long time ago, a little boy had said something similar to me. Back then, a flood had struck Dichi, causing grain prices to soar, and many people couldn't afford food. Refugees from other regions flocked to the capital in search of survival, and the streets were filled with bodies every day. The Shin family had some grain reserves, but it was a drop in the bucket for the thousands of refugees. My father set up a porridge stall to provide relief, but the porridge became thinner and thinner. In the end, a pot of porridge contained only a handful of rice, looking like clear water. While I was drinking the thin porridge, a little boy with a delicate face held a piece of green bean cake, its sweet aroma making my mouth water. I traded a bowl of thin porridge for the green bean cake and then broke the cake into pieces, throwing them into the pot. There were many refugees, and the porridge was not enough, so we prioritized the children. One by one, the emaciated children devoured their portions, licking their bowls clean, savoring the faint sweetness. The boy and I sat quietly together, and he watched me drool. The pot was scraped clean, and I never got to taste the green bean cake. Before we parted, the boy told me he would grow the largest field and the most grain for me, so I could have endless green bean cakes. He sat in a luxurious carriage, his expression serious and earnest.
I will become the greatest businesswoman in Dichi, make the most money, and buy all your land and green bean cakes.
The man before me overlapped with the boy in my memory. Though it felt a bit incongruous, it made sense. He had kept his childhood promise in his heart, and I was touched, though also a bit pained.
So, you've been squandering money for my sake?
Thinking of the money that had gone to waste, I felt not just heartache but also physical pain. As the future greatest businesswoman in Dichi, I hated three things the most: losing money, and losing money. Looking at William's face, I sighed silently. Well, I can afford this loss. The view from the top of the mountain was the best, with 100 acres of apricot trees and 1,000 acres of fertile land all in sight. Visitors came in an endless stream, and I was overjoyed. 10 taels, 20 taels, 30 taels. In just a short while, several hundred taels of silver had been earned. This was inspired by Miss Yu from Jiangnan. To enter the mountain, one had to pay first. The guards at the foot of the mountain were specially sent by William, almost directly telling everyone that I was under his protection, so there was no fear of anyone not paying. Although he had no money, his status was second only to one, and he wasn't afraid of offending people. Sitting in the pavilion, the smile on William's face never faded. I wondered what was so amusing.
Clara, what do you think of me?
His eyes were like a clear spring, with the mountain breeze blowing, creating ripples. My gaze swept over his jaw, and I swallowed, just about to speak when someone interrupted.
Your Highness? Greetings, Your Highness.
A group of noble young men crowded outside the pavilion, and among them was a familiar face. I remained silent, watching William's face turn from red to black. The group showed no intention of leaving and started chatting away.
Brother Ethan was blessed with a daughter yesterday, and today we meet Your Highness here. It's a rare coincidence. How about asking Your Highness to bestow a name?
The scene fell silent instantly. Someone tugged at the speaker's sleeve, signaling him to shut up. Ethan's face stiffened, but he had to step forward.
Your Highness's words are worth 1,000 gold. I dare not ask for such a favor.
Green bean. 2,000 gold, remember to send it to my residence.
So, Ethan's daughter is named Green Bean? Why does it sound a bit cute? Ethan gritted his teeth and bowed.
Thank you, Your Highness, for the name.
Green symbolizes hope, and beans mean that what you sow is what you reap. Green Bean is indeed an excellent name.
So it could be explained that way. I couldn't help but cast an approving glance. If you're not the next top scholar, I'll be the first to disagree. William glanced coldly, almost writing impatience on his face. Even a fool knew it was time to leave.
Your Highness, I take my leave.
Your Highness, I take my leave.
Your Highness, Your Highness's consort, I take my leave.
The person next to him quickly covered his mouth. Seeing that William didn't speak, he hurriedly pulled him away, scolding in a low voice.
You fool, His Highness isn't married yet.
I just arrived in the capital, I didn't know. But His Highness and that lady really look well matched.
I silently facepalmed. This whispering wasn't quiet at all. William lowered his head to straighten his clothes, but I clearly saw him stifling a laugh. In the end, only Ethan remained. In just 2 months, he had aged considerably. The half-worn clothes he wore were ones I had tailored for him when I was still in the Ethan household. He had no strong foundation, and Margaret was used to a lavish lifestyle. I heard that after I left, she didn't restrain herself either. With such limited family assets, I wondered how long they could maintain their extravagance.
Your Highness, I feel it's necessary to remind you that the woman by your side is my discarded wife. She is arrogant and extravagant. You are of noble status. Do not tarnish your reputation for a discarded woman.
On reflection, he wasn't entirely wrong. I am indeed not Loki and have been married before. Besides beauty and money, I have nothing else. A man like William is not someone I should aspire to. Suddenly, I felt a warmth on my hand. I turned to see a large hand holding mine.
You may be blind, but I am not.
His cold voice carried no warmth, and I realized that he could be quite imposing.
I have already asked my brother for permission to marry Clara. Next time we meet, she will be the most esteemed princess consort of Dichi.
William held my hand and walked down the mountain without looking back. I hadn't yet processed what had just happened. The warmth in my palm was so real. I struggled slightly, only to be held tighter.
Your Highness, you're going the wrong way.
My name is Matthew.
Of course, I knew your name was Matthew, but even if you tell me, I dare not call you that.
What I said just now is true. This time, I won't miss you again.
He started to ramble, saying a lot. It turned out that 3 years ago, he went to the Shin family not to collaborate on selling cloth but to propose to my father. My father set a condition: if he could really open a silk shop in the harsh northern region, he would marry me to him. This was clearly a polite refusal, but he pretended not to understand and actually went. Unexpectedly, he heard about my wedding while in the Northwest. He hurried back to the capital, arriving on the day of the wedding, and had the emperor send Ethan to the frontier.
Was Grace also your arrangement?
They were already fond of each other. I just gave them a little push.
He didn't feel he was wrong at all.
Ethan appears upright but is actually selfish and lacks any of Robert's integrity.
I couldn't agree more. My father had favored him, likely thinking that a man like Robert would surely have a worthy son. But who knew, Ethan turned out to be just like his mother.
So, are you willing to be my princess consort?
His eyes were burning with intensity, his handsome face full of sincerity, as if rejecting him would make me the worst person ever. And I, being kind-hearted, naturally couldn't be a bad person.
I think you are quite good.
His smile hadn't fully bloomed when I poured cold water on it.
But the silk shop in the Northwest hasn't opened yet, Matthew.
I calculated in my mind how much silver it would take. I couldn't help but sigh. It seemed I would have to work even harder to make money in the future, as I would have to support a spendthrift. It wasn't until we had walked for a while that clear laughter sounded behind me. Matthew shouted.
Clara, we have a long future ahead.